I was just the music nerd at school who went out proudly with his pocket money every week to buy that single piece of vinyl to take it to the youth club on Tuesday and Thursday nights, where I sort of became a self-appointed DJ. I just loved anything and everything to do with records. I had to know who wrote it, who produced it, where it was recorded. I loved the artwork. And then when I decided I was going to get involved with music, I met this girl who introduced me to a theatre agent. And the next thing, I'm auditioning for a show as a singer. And I'd been having singing lessons. My first show was Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I did a tour of that. And it was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. In my mind, I was being paid to sing, even though I was in the chorus of Joseph. I didn't play a lead part. But, you know, when you're doing 8 shows a week, you really find out stuff about your throat and your voice, what bothers it, how it doesn't work if you don't sleep enough, etc. And then from there, I went into a show called Godspell, written by Stephen Schwartz, who's actually the writer of the current hit Wicked. I called my agent and I said to him, I'm leaving London, I'm joining a band. I can't do any more auditions. I'm going to live in Leighton Buzzard. And I always imagined he must have put the phone down and thought, right, well, that's the last we'll be hearing of him.
And from there to Kajagoogoo, the road was an interesting story, wasn't it? Because you auditioned for a band with Mike Nolan, and then later on you bumped into Nick Rhodes, who later went on to produce the first album. So tell us the story behind all that.
So I was in a band with Mike Nolan from Bucks Fizz before Kajagoogoo and before Bucks Fizz. Mike used to give me a lift home because I didn't have a car, and sometimes rehearsals were late. And that is why I've got a huge soft spot for Bucks Fizz, now the Fizz, of course, because I kind of followed what Mike was doing. I think he's got a stunning voice, especially showcased on their ballad, Now Those Days Are Gone. What a beautiful song. Then I met a band called Art Nouveau, who became Kajagoogoo. They were already a band and had been a band for 3 years. Some of them had been to school together. After about 2 years of being with Kajagoogoo, I came back to London and we started looking for a record deal. And I worked at a nightclub in Old Bond Street called the Embassy Club. And it was a very cool, hip and trendy place to be. I served a drink one night to the keyboard player from Duran Duran, Nick Rhodes, and his manager, Paul Barrow. I started telling him about my band and enthusing about it. And to my amazement, he just said, well, send me a cassette. Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I'll have a listen to the songs. And then he called me a week later. He took our tape into EMI Records and we got signed. And then he co-produced the first album, including Too Shy.
And of course, the rest is musical history. So successful at that time. Solo career followed, you know, hits with NeverEnding Story and others. And you've done some acting again. You've done all sorts of things, really. Is that what keeps you fresh, doing the variety of stuff that you do?
Yeah, I love all aspects of it. In the early 90s, when no one was interested in the 80s, you know, the 80s were never more out of fashion than that early 90s period when the sort of samples and DJ and house music came along. And so I embraced that. I became a sort of record producer. I thought that would be my role for the rest of my life. I thought I'd be like the footballer who becomes the football manager or the actor who goes on to direct. And then in 97, one of the first 80s compilation albums came out and it went to number 1 in the charts, followed by a second and the third. Suddenly there were these 80s themed events happening and I got a phone call to do a few gigs and I thought, well, this is going to last about 6 months. And here I am 25 years later or something.